Welcome to another quiet journey through history. Tonight we return once again to the age of the Norse, but not to the warmth of the longhouse or the stillness of the fjord. No, this time you're aboard a ship. A long, narrow vessel, carved from oak, lashed together with sinew and sap. A dragon's head rises from the prow, teeth bared to whatever may await. And you are one of the many aboard. Not the leader, not the hero. Just another tired soul, gripping a heavy oar, trying not to fall into the freezing sea. You can hear the creak of timber beneath you, the dull splash of water against the hull, the wet cough of the man beside you, and above all, the wind, relentless, unforgiving. This is not a story of glory or conquest. It is a voyage. A long, slow, damp voyage. A story told not in battles, but in blisters, salt sores, and stiff knees. So settle in. Let the waves carry you. And imagine yourself, for a while aboard the longship. It begins in the dark. It always begins in the dark. The Norse did not sail by the sun, not at first light. The voyage starts before it rises, when the mist clings low to the water and the cold settles deep in your bones. Your hands are already numb as they reach for the oar. You don't even remember the last time they were warm. The air smells of wet wood, tar, and sweat that never quite dries. You are one of 40, maybe more, packed shoulder to shoulder, knee to knee. There's no privacy and no personal space. Each man breathes the same damp breath. The cloaks are soaked. The bread is damp, and the sea is always moving. You row, and row some more, then row some more. Not this early yet, not this early. Not with the wind like this. So it's the oar again. It's the same heavy stroke over and over. The rhythm is hypnotic, slow, painful, necessary, and then a pause. Not because you're finished, but because someone ahead has vomited over the side, and the stench rolls back like the tide. You blink. Your eyes sting with salt. Maybe it's from the sea spray. Maybe it's the beginnings of tears. But there's no shame in that. Even the veterans, the older men who've done this before, even they are silent, stoic, staring into the gray. The rations are passed quietly. A bit of dried fish, maybe some hard bread. Water if you're lucky, mead if you're not. Alcohol makes the cold worse, but some still prefer it. A brief moment of warmth, even if it burns. You chew, slowly, carefully. Teeth cracked by years of bad food, and no dentists don't appreciate hard crusts. A splinter of bone reminds you to be careful. Last time, someone swallowed one and didn't wake up the next morning. No one talks about it. When it rains, and it often does, you don't try to stay dry. There's nowhere to hide. The water seeps into every fold of your tunic. Your boots squelch. The bottom of the boat is never quite dry. A shallow lake of slop collecting under your feet. Seawater, rain, oil, spilled stew, and maybe worse. Sleep, it comes in fragments. Stolen moments between rowing. You curl up, knees to chest, using your sack as a pillow. If you're lucky, you fall asleep before the man next to you starts snoring. If not, you count the creaks in the hull until you drift off. And when you do sleep, it's never long. The cold always finds a way in. And then, before you know it, a shout, splash, a shudder of the hull. And it's time to row again. No one asks how far you've gone. No one knows how much farther there is. Only the rhythm of the sea, the endless rowing. He didn't say much. Even before the voyage began, Torbjorn was known in the village as a man of few words. Not out of rudeness, just quiet, measured, thoughtful. He had a round face, wind-burned and always pink in the cold, and a thick beard that looked permanently damp. No one remembered ever seeing him without it. He wasn't a warrior, not really. He owned no sword, just a stout axe. He used more for chopping wood than enemies. But he was strong. One of the best rowers, they said. And so when the call came to take the ship west, toward uncertain lands, unfamiliar coasts, Torbjorn joined. Not because he wanted glory, not because he longed for silver or fame, but because he had nothing keeping him home. No wife, no children. Just a low-roofed hut at the edge of the village, and a goat that barely listened to him. The voyage began like all others. The slow, brutal rhythm of life at sea. And Torbjorn, he rowed. Quietly, reliably, every day, without complaint. When the others grumbled, he said nothing. When someone spilled meat on his cloak, he simply wrung it out. When rations were short, he took the smallest portion. He spoke once. Once during the second week. A younger man beside him had cut his hand badly while repairing a torn sail. The salt in the wound made him howl, and Torbjorn, watching calmly, murmured, "Wrap it tight. Salt keeps the rot away." That was it. That was the only time he spoke. No one knows exactly when he vanished. It might have been during the night. There was a storm, not a violent one, but sharp and sudden, the kind that lashes and bites but doesn't linger. Some say they saw him bailing water with a wooden bowl just before dawn. Others recall his cloak hung near the back, still dripping. But by morning, he was gone. No cry for help. No splash in the dark. Just gone. His belongings were still there. A crude spoon carved from bone. A small pouch of dried berries, perfectly preserved. A single iron nail, wrapped in a scrap of wool. A tiny carved figure of Thor. The hammer worn smooth from handling. Captain didn't speak of it. Simply made a sign to the gods and ordered rowing to continue. There was no ceremony, no stone, no songs. But for the rest of the voyage, the others watched the spot where Torbjorn used to sit. And sometimes, when the fog crept low and the sea grew strangely calm, they said they could hear the faint rhythm of an oar, dipping into water. It's not from their boat, but from somewhere, just beyond. And when they returned to the village, the captain delivered Torbjorn's pouch to the blacksmith. No explanation, just a nod. And the next spring, on the very edge of the village, someone built a new longhouse. Small, quiet, and near it, a single goat, standing still, watching the sea. Now, imagine you're standing at the edge of the known world. No maps, no compasses, just a long, narrow boat, and the vast blue unknown ahead. The Viking seafarers were not reckless, though their journeys seemed impossible by modern standards. They were methodical, patient, observant. They read the world not through ink and parchment, but through patterns, textures, and memory. Their greatest tool wasn't made of metal or stone. It was the sky. It's the sun, the moon, the stars, ancient guides that drifted overhead with comforting consistency. Vikings would often use a tool called the sunstone, a crystalline mineral, most likely Iceland spar, that could polarize light even on cloudy days. By holding it up to the sky, they could find the sun's position when it was otherwise hidden. Simple, brilliant, silent. They watched the birds, too, certain seabirds. Like the fulmar and the puffin, never wandered far from land. So if you saw them circling, you knew land was near. They even brought ravens aboard, caged at first, but released when land was suspected to be close. If the raven flew upward and circled back, nothing ahead. But if it flew straight and didn't return, you followed the raven. They studied waves, the direction of the swell, the chop of the water. How the ocean moved told them where they were, like reading lines on a page. They followed whales, not to hunt them, not always. But because whales tended to migrate along the edges of oceanic shelves, where fish were plentiful and land was never too distant, this was not guesswork. This was art, refined through generations, passed down without ever being written. And then, of course, there was the Viking sun compass, carved into wood, crude circle with etched lines to track the sun's movement throughout the day. It wasn't precise, but it didn't need to be. They weren't seeking coordinates. They were seeking rhythm, direction, a sense of flow. And over time, they created mental maps, not just of distance and direction, but of memory. This is the part of the sea where the wind stings like needles. This is the place where whales rise in pairs. This is the crossing where Torbjorn vanished. And so they remembered. Not just routes, but stories. Because in Viking culture, navigation and narrative were intertwined. To sail was to travel through history, your own and that of your ancestors. Even today, archaeologists uncover traces of their journeys, small stones with Norse runes found in distant lands, not left as decoration, but as quiet signatures, a way of saying, we were here. Wooden fragments of ships buried deep in peat, iron rivets rusted by time but still in place, like stitches holding together the skin of a memory. Animal bones, not native to those islands, hinting at what was brought across oceans, goats, chickens, sheep, and then coins. Coins from Baghdad, coins from France, coins that no Viking king ever minted, but that still found their way into Viking hands, not through conquest alone, but through trade, curiosity, exchange. Vikings, despite their brutal image, were listeners, learners, absorbed what they encountered. They spoke many tongues, not fluently perhaps, but enough to bargain, to trade, to survive. And when they returned, they didn't boast. They told stories of stars that danced, of whales that sang, of lands where the grass was so green it hurt their eyes. Their journeys weren't marked on any map, but they were carved into memory, like waves etched into the hull of a longship. So far, we've drifted alongside the ordinary Viking, the oarsman, the farmer-turned-sailor, the woman with a crying child aboard a crowded ship. But now, let's shift the perspective. Let's imagine you're someone different, not the one rowing, but the one being rowed. You are a Viking jarl, a chieftain, person of land, of lineage, of long memory. Your voyages were no less harsh than those of your crew, but they were carried out differently. You didn't sleep on or benches. You had a raised platform, fur bedding, perhaps a small canopy of linen or hide to shelter from the icy spray. Your boots were reinforced leather, your cloak dyed with precious plant pigments, rare in your homeland, imported through careful trade. You didn't ration porridge in chipped wooden bowls. You ate dried meats, hard cheeses, honey-smeared flatbread. You drank mead, Carefully guarded casks brought aboard in tight bundles of straw. You brought warriors with you, not just sailors. Fighters loyal to your name, your house, your family saga. Their shields bore your colors. Their swords had runes etched into the blades. They rode when ordered, but they fought without asking. Your ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a symbol. The carved dragon on the prow wasn't for decoration. It told the world something, that you had the means to build it. You had the followers to crew it, that you were a name worth remembering or fearing. And yet, you were still at the mercy of the sea. When storms came, they didn't care for status. When sails tore, your wealth couldn't stitch them. But still, there were differences. When the ship reached foreign shores, you stepped off first. You were offered tribute. You held audiences with other nobles or commanders or kings. You had the luxury of interpreters. You didn't haggle for fish. You negotiated for land, for silver, for alliances sealed by marriage or steel. And when things went poorly, it was your men who fell first. You were protected, hidden, guarded. Even among warriors, there was a hierarchy. Even at sea, where so much was shared, salt air, freezing cold, days without land, there were unspoken rules. And when the voyage ended and you returned home, your story was told in a grander voice. Your skald, your personal poet, would recount your journey with crafted precision. You didn't just sail to a village, you cut the gray throat of the world and return with its gold. Even failure could be sculpted into legend if told well enough. Back in your longhouse, with its high beams and scented fires, you would recount the trip to your kin. Children gathered around, drums low in the background, a horn of ale in your hand, and the crew, they were gone, dispersed, forgotten, mostly. But their blisters and broken backs had carried you there. The sea did not remember their names, but you did. For a time, and now we drift back from this journey, from the frozen breath of northern winds, from the creaking planks and salt-worn ropes, from the silent tension between our strokes and sky. The Viking sea voyage was no single thing. It was many things. A test, a necessity, a burden, a path to power. Some never returned. Some returned richer. And some were changed in ways that could never be seen, only felt. Tonight, as you rest, warm, dry, safe, know that there once were people who dared cross oceans in ships no wider than your bed, guided by stars, winds, and a story whispered by generations. The sea may sleep, but it remembers. And now so do you. Good night.